Hey, it's Carrie.
And Ashley.
We welcome you to the Self-Care Cafe. We are both health professionals and moms and nature lovers and food lovers and love helping women get over dieting and just start living. We think that talking about bodies and perfect bodies and dieting is just boring.
Did we put you to sleep there, Carrie?
Yes. So if you are ready to ditch dieting and get to living and talk about more important things, then you are in the right place. We don't put shame and guilt on the menu here. You don't even have to tip us.
Nope.
Come hang with us. The advice is free. We want to have a bunch of girlfriends to just hang out with and get real with, and it's time to start living, ladies.
Hey, Carrie.
Hey, Ashley. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm well.
Awesome.
Oh, what have we got on the menu today?
I was hoping we could talk about what to do when we're having bad body days.
Ugh, I hear you on that one.
We all have them.
Yes, we do.
We might not admit it all the time.
Right. Yeah, I know. I feel like some in our space don't like, they want to make it sound like that's just like that doesn't exist, right? Or
Right.
something, or
Yeah, like,
or that it shouldn't exist.
right, like you love your body every day, all the time.
Right. Right. And that's just not how real life is.
No.
So what do you do like when you're having those, like when you are feeling quote unquote fat?
Well, first, I think let's tackle like when we say that we're feeling fat.
Yep.
I genuinely understand that, but also like how are we feeling that? Like, is it the physical sensation of like just feeling bigger or bloated, maybe?
Yeah.
Or is it something else that's making us feel like that emotion, which technically fat isn't an emotion. So
Right.
to say that we're feeling fat sometimes, I feel like is not quite the right like wording almost, even though it's what a lot of us say. I feel like it's a
Right.
little bit deeper than that.
Yeah, I agree. Sometimes it might be more about maybe like your body insecurities, um, and feeling like you're not measuring up in some way, whether that is physically or maybe it's even more emotionally or in a relationship, or so it's like almost like you're transferring feeling bad about something else onto yourself.
Yeah, I think that that's true a lot because even when we're just stressed about something, I
Mhm.
feel like we tend to pick ourselves as an easy target.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
bodies are definitely an easy target because from when we're teeny, we're taught to like hate our bodies.
Right. Yeah. It's so easy to pick our bodies apart, right?
Right.
The part like, well, I like this part, but I don't like this part. It's so interesting because for years, I've done this exercise with classes and clients, and I'll say, tell me something that you like about your body. And it's like crickets.
Yeah.
I'm like, anything. Like, tell me anything you like about your body. And it's just so interesting. So many, what I would say probably the top one is eyes.
Mm-hmm.
People like their eyes.
And isn't that interesting? Because you can't do anything about that.
Right.
and
Right.
and like it's I don't know. That's so interesting to me that people pick that.
Yep.
I guess I wonder too, like your eyes can tell a lot,
Hmm.
like your emotions and your attitude towards whatever people are talking to you about, or like your feelings at the moment. They kind of like people refer to them as like the windows of the soul sometimes, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's more about like who you are as a person instead of like what your body looks like. So that's
Mm,
interesting on a couple different levels there, I
yeah.
think.
It's also interesting because you look at your body with your
Oh,
eyes,
that's so true. I didn't think
right?
like that.
So I know, ooh, we could go down a rabbit hole big time with this one. But yeah, no, it's so interesting though, and it's also kind of sad that we have to stop and really like that we can get into that hating our bodies so much we can't even think of one thing that we like about them.
Right.
And so what I try to do though with the exercise is not just liking parts of your body physically, but what it can do for you.
Right.
So that's also the other part of that exercise as well. And I'll say to them, well, do you have two arms that work right now? Yes. Okay. What do those arms do? Can you use them to hug people? Can you hold a child's hand? You know, it's like so many, and not everyone can, right? So it's regardless of, you know, if you are missing limbs or you're in a wheelchair or you have a different ability like that, it's still finding ways to appreciate your body, whether it's like, hey, my heart is still beating and keeping me alive. I can, right? Like there's so many different ways to look at it and go deeper, that it's just it's an interesting exercise to do.
For sure. And back to the eye kind of idea for a second, like we are looking at our bodies with our eyes, but the
Mhm.
perception, which is in your brain, is
Yes.
where things go awry, it feels
Yeah.
like, right? Like you can look at things with your eyes and observe, but then we pass the judgment or the perception on whether something is good or bad or pretty or not or whatever it might
Right.
be. That's so interesting.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah,
Little something else to think about there.
for sure. And I was just thinking about something else too, like with your body and like you said, practicing gratitude towards your body. That doesn't
Mm.
mean we have to do it like 24 hours a day, 7 days a
Right.
week. And that's what we're talking about today is those like those days where it's just like, okay, I've been working on practicing gratitude towards my body, maybe, or maybe this is a new thing for me to even think about. But some days we just don't feel comfortable in our bodies or we
Right.
don't feel good in our bodies. And like, where is that coming from? Maybe
Mhm.
there's something that's triggering you about that. Maybe
Yeah.
there's an event coming up, right? And you're worried
Ooh,
about
that's a
what
good
people,
one.
yeah, maybe
Yeah.
you're worried about what people are going to think about your body at the event. Um, or if you have to like dress up and you don't have a lot of clothes appropriate for that event, maybe you have to go shopping for something new.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a whole thing we'll get into also. But like different wardrobes and different activities requiring different types of clothes, like all of those can bring up this
Mm.
bad body day stuff.
Yeah. I mean, like how many we live up north, so how many women just can't wait for colder weather
Yeah.
so they can cover up, right? And then they dread it when it gets warm again. And I know that I've been there. I still have my days where I'm like, ugh, I just don't want to, you know, wear a sleeveless top or, you know, shorts or whatever. And, you know, and as we get older, our bodies change in different ways too. So, you know, like skin's starting to get a little looser
Yeah.
in certain spots. And it's like, but, you know, there's so many ads and commercials and products out there that it's always, oh, that's happening. Here's a fix for that, right? Like
Right.
there's our bodies are always something to be fixed, is what it feels like.
For sure. Yeah, and like you were just saying, I was actually just thinking about that today. I'm like, oh, I can't wait till it's chillier so I don't have to wear all this warm weather clothes, but not because I don't necessarily like how my body looks in them or whatever. It's more about I don't have very many warm weather clothes that are comfortable right now because I've been going through some body changes and having to have purchase new stuff, but I don't necessarily have enough for like what I would prefer without having to do laundry every other day.
Time to go shopping
Yeah.
again.
But it's hard because like Carrie said, where we live, we don't have a lot of shopping options. And so
Oh, we
a
don't.
lot of it's online and that is just like hit
That
or
is such a
miss, right?
pain. Oh
It's
yeah, for
so
sure.
frustrating.
Yeah. We'll get into women's sizes in a minute.
Yeah.
So So there are definitely triggers, right,
Right.
to the bad body day. And I'll even so I have my man trained now that if I make some sort of self-deprecating comment, like, or if he usually it's like following a compliment that he gives to me,
Yep.
and I'm just like, ugh, and he goes, and I'm like, I'm having a bad body day.
Perfect.
So we can talk about it, but it feels good to be able to talk about that.
Yep.
So, if you have a partner, a significant other, or, someone that you can just be honest with, it doesn't mean you have to like, you know, whine to them constantly about it or anything like that, because no one wants to listen to that either, in my opinion.
Right.
But just when you're having like just one of those days and you just feel like a lot of times it's like I feel bloated, or it's like, where did these boobs come from? Like, I
Right.
didn't have these 30 years ago. So it's just all the our bodies are constantly changing, even though, like, Hollywood or whatever, they want to make it look like your body shouldn't change, right?
Right.
You should still look like your 21-year-old self your
Yep.
whole life. It's just not real. It's not realistic. It's just not true.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think, Carrie, you mentioned like triggers about it. So
Yeah.
what are some other triggers people might have?
Well, I know that wearing clothes that are uncomfortable,
Yes,
right?
that's a
Because we keep
huge one.
trying to squeeze into these clothes, instead of setting them aside or getting rid of them, and keep trying to squeeze into them. And it's just not comfortable. I know if I have a top on that's too tight, I'm constantly pulling at it.
Hmm.
Um,
And
or
and after that too, like if you're constantly adjusting or you're constantly thinking about how tight it is or how uncomfortable it is, we tend to then like say, "Oh, I need to do such and such to quote unquote fix my body because the shirt didn't fit like this a few weeks ago or a month ago or last season or whatever it was." And so the tight clothes, and I think we've mentioned this in other episodes probably, is tight clothes make us want to like I said, quote unquote fix our bodies and do something about it. And
right.
that's not how clothes are supposed to make you feel.
No. And clothes are so funny, right? Like, eh, there was this one pair of really nice leggings that my bonus daughter got. And so her dad wanted to get me a pair. I went and I tried them on, and I said, nope, they are not cut for my body.
Right.
They were not comfortable, and I loved them. I
Right.
wanted a pair, but I couldn't find, they were not cut for my body shape. They
Hmm.
just weren't.
And that's
Um,
such a good realization because a
mhm,
lot of people might be like, instead of thinking, oh, these just aren't cut for me, right? Like you're saying that the clothes are wrong in that statement. You're not saying, oh, my body's wrong because they don't fit into this pair of leggings.
right. Like, I've got to change something
Right.
about my body to make them fit those. When realistically, really the way that they were made, I don't have an hourglass figure. I don't have a waist that goes in. I'm just very straight. So, and that's how they were cut, was smaller on the waist. And then,
Yep.
um, so that's just not my body. So I found some that did fit it.
Exactly.
So yeah, the tight fitting clothes is a big one. And also keeping in mind also that, something can fit decently in the morning, and as you go through your day and you eat and you drink, by the end of the day your body has changed some.
Yeah. Or even like just the quality of the clothing too. Like it
Oh,
stretches during the day or whatever, things just move.
yeah, yeah. And realizing that that's normal. I
Right.
think that's a lot of this too that Ashley and I are trying to get across, is that this is normal, this is real, this is real life, versus what you will see on social media, on, you know TV and the movies and things like that. The diet culture wants you to think like, no, this is your body, this is like what you should always look like, but that's just not how our bodies work.
Right. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what are some other triggers, Ashley?
Oh, I feel like looking at pictures of yourself,
Mm.
is a big, huge one, and we should probably do a whole episode about that.
Yeah.
So we'll just talk about it briefly for today, but looking back on photos, even if they were from an hour ago or 3 years ago or even longer than that ago or a month ago, whatever. Anytime
Mm.
we look back on pictures, I feel like it's triggering because we, like Carrie said, we change, our bodies change. And whether you're looking at a picture of a time when you were like really into diet culture and, maybe you liked the way you looked, and now it's different, that can be triggering, but also looking at your body and maybe saying, oh, I was thinner then, and what was I thinking? And, it's a whole array of feelings, and photos are definitely a big, big trigger for a lot of people.
Yeah, for sure. And like you'd already mentioned, events. So if you've got like a class reunion or a family reunion or a vacation or something,
Wedding,
weddings,
wedding.
yeah, that's a huge one. That can be very triggering. um, and just and then what do a lot of people do though?
Right, we try to
They
like slim down for the
Mhm.
event, right? Like,
Right.
what is it? Like, shred it for the wedding, or like just
Mm.
that's more for brides probably, but it's still there. Or like if you're invited to a lot of summer barbecues or pool parties or boating outings or whatever, where there's probably a bathing suit involved, those are even more pressure because there's probably less fabric on most of the clothes required for some of those events, which ups the insecurity factor. And I
Right.
think, and like I said, we should do a whole nother episode on like photos and stuff like this, but I feel like thinking about it more as the activity and the memories and the time that you're going to spend with people that you like, hopefully that's why you're going, and having a good time should really outweigh like those insecurities because,
No pun intended.
right? And
Outweigh.
yeah. And it's so awful to be like, "Oh, people aren't coming to this." Maybe it's because they're worried about what their body looks like and what other people are gonna think. And in reality, if it's people that care about you, hopefully they don't care about that.
Right. Right. Um,
That's another trigger we talked about too, is like having conversations with people who are critical of your body or other people's bodies.
right.
So like if you're sitting next to someone and they're nitpicking somebody else's body and you're like, well,
Well,
mine doesn't look that much different than that.
right. What are they thinking about me?
Right. And they're just not saying it. So yeah,
Right.
all of that.
But and I also this is a little reframe for that when you find yourself in those situations because we often do. When someone is nitpicking other people's bodies, it's usually because they don't feel good in their own.
Right.
Uh, so if you remember that, like, oh, okay, that they're saying that because they really feel like crap in their own body. So, so I'm not gonna, I feel bad for them that they have to put someone else's bodies down, um, because they don't like their own.
Exactly. Yeah. And you can find ways to change the conversation or leave the conversation.
How
Um,
about them Red Sox?
yeah. And again, that's probably a whole nother episode at some point.
Right, right. How to pivot, pivot a conversation. Um, but yeah, and also, so another trigger is just shopping for clothes.
Oh my gosh. Ugh. I have, so I used to enjoy shopping a lot. I still had problems finding clothes because I have very short legs. So everything was always too long. But
Mhm.
I truly do not enjoy it anymore. Um, and it's so frustrating because, like we mentioned just a second earlier, like the fashion sizes for women's sizes is absolute, I'm not gonna say it, but BS.
They're effed up,
They
and I'm
really
sorry
are.
that there's no other way to say it.
There
Like
isn't.
they are just you can wear a small in one brand and at another brand the same kind of clothing is a large, like
Right.
it or an extra large. It just doesn't, it just makes no sense at
It
all.
doesn't. Or
That's why just
yeah,
don't worry about the size on the label.
right.
Right? It's the because they just are so wonky. They yeah.
Yeah. Or even like going to a department store and picking up like 5 different brands of the same size, like let's just say
Right.
size 10 or something, and you
Yeah.
hold them all up next to each other and it's not even close to the same thing.
All different.
They're all different. The waist might be bigger, it might be plus all the different cuts
Longer.
there are. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And shirts. I mean, yeah, it is so crazy. So, if you can shop and start remembering that the size on it really doesn't mean anything.
Right. And some people, I totally understand that there's not a lot of sizes that fit you in a store, which is a whole other topic that gets me fired up. Like, I just don't understand because most people wear over a size 14, 16, but a lot of places that's where like the sizes stop.
Mhm.
And it's insane. Like, we're telling like 60% of the population, which is more than half, right? That
Mhm.
we're not going to carry your size. It's total, total chaos. I just don't understand.
Right. And then you wonder why people can't, you know, why would they end up wearing clothes that are too tight?
Right. Right.
Because they
Because you
can't
can't
find
find
them.
anything
Right. Right.
for sure.
Ugh. Any other triggers?
So I think going along with shopping, kind of like changes of season when you have to
Mm.
try on clothes that are in your closet for different weather patterns, like going from spring/winter to summer and going from summer fall back to winter can be a big one because you haven't worn those clothes in months at that point usually. For
Right.
us here, it's not quite so
Like
drastic, but
what?
it's not
1 month.
right, but it's not far off. But yeah, changing seasons because like we said, you haven't worn those clothes in months probably. Um, and that can be tricky because like we talked about, your body can change over that short amount of time and it gives you some feels because you try them on, they don't fit. And it's like, well, what's wrong with my body? Because I used to fit into these like 3 months ago. That can send us into that bad body day spiral for
Yeah,
sure.
for sure. Yeah, there's a lot of we can't wait sometimes for the fall. We can wear warm weather clothes again. But but we shouldn't feel that, or not don't shoot all over yourself,
Right.
Carrie. Um,
You don't need to feel that way. It,
don't
it doesn't
need to
it doesn't
feel.
need to be part of our day. And even though it is, we can figure out like how to deal with that.
Mhm, for sure, definitely.
Because some days are just bad days and no matter what you do, you still have those feelings, which is fine.
Yeah,
It's just what
yeah,
do we do with them? So
right.
instead of like I feel like sometimes we just need to take that step back and decide what to do with the feelings instead of immediately like jumping to a reaction, right? Remember that difference between response and reaction.
Right.
Carrie, you want to remind everybody?
Yeah, so a reaction is that sort of emotional knee-jerk reaction. You feel something and immediately you react without thinking. You just totally an emotional reaction. A response is when you stop and you take that step back and you breathe and you get that oxygen to your brain, and it also calms down your emotions by that with those deep breaths, and then you can respond in a more intellectual.
Right. It gives you that extra time to like process and decide what to do. So, like in this scenario, if we were having a reaction to our bad body day, like let's say some shorts didn't fit when we're getting ready to go somewhere. So we're on a time crunch, right? And we could say, oh my gosh, these shorts don't fit. And you could say all these negative things about yourself and then decide I'm starting a diet like today, right? Like that's the reaction.
Yeah.
And you could
Yeah.
choose to wear them
Or,
anyways, too. Like that's another reaction.
right. Or, you say, why bother? And you go bury yourself, in a whole carton of ice
Right.
cream.
Right. Exactly.
So the both extremes, right? Either one, instead of stopping and saying, okay, my body's changed. It's normal for our bodies to change. And also ask yourself and be honest what how have your health habits been,
Hmm.
right? Am I engaging in self-care and taking care of myself and my body? Um, and kind of it is what it is right now. Do I have something else that I could wear that would be more comfortable? Um, and kind of deal with it that way, but being real about it, um, and not beating yourself up over it,
Right.
because what that's just going to make you feel crappier about yourself.
Right.
Um, but and just find something that fits and get on with your day.
Yes. Yeah.
Is kind of it. But you can kind of think of it like ABCs is what I like to use. So um the A is acknowledge how you're feeling. So when you are you have that day and you're like, ugh, and you start all the self-deprecating comments. I'm so fat. Why I suck? Why,
Right.
why I'm so stupid? Why did I blah, 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 whatever? Why did I eat that last night or whatever it is? Just stop, acknowledge how you're feeling without, like Ashley says, don't judge it. Just acknowledge it.
Right. And try to
Just
figure
kind
it out. Like, is there something else to this? Like, if I'm saying to myself, like, why'd I eat that last night? Like, what's going on? Is it stress because you're trying to get out the door? Or is it stress because you're worried about what people are going to think of you at like the event we talked about? Or like,
right.
what's happening?
Mhm. Are you going to meet someone for coffee and they tend to be very critical?
Right. And
Are
then you're
you
dreading that conversation.
right, right. Are you already you're running late already and now you can't find anything to wear? And maybe you're actually upset with yourself for not getting up 15 minutes earlier.
Right.
You hit the snooze again, or what really is going on with that. Um, So acknowledging it, take that step back and breathe, and then commit to using your tools. And that's one of them, is to sort of reframe it and kind of dig in deeper, like what is really going on? What is going on in my life right now? What am I really upset about?
Yep.
Um, and maybe it really is like your body, like um maybe there's some fear with the changes that are going on in your body. Um, maybe you acknowledge that you haven't been engaging in self-care, right? You haven't been moving your body. You haven't been eating mindfully, and paying attention to your hunger cues and your fullness cues. And maybe you haven't been dealing with things in your life that are stressing you out. Maybe you haven't been sleeping well. Maybe you haven't had a good bedtime routine and you've been staying up too late. And like, do you see that? Like, there's all kinds of things. It's not just about food.
Right.
It's about a lot of things that could be going on. But it's being honest with yourself about um, what you have or haven't been doing.
Right. And just to add on to that too, it's like normal for us to feel better about our bodies, like no matter what they look like, just because that's how our culture is,
Right.
which is so frustrating.
Yeah, because you could be a size 2 and still hate your body.
Right.
Right? There's
Yep.
always, it doesn't matter what size you are, what you weigh, how old you are. We can always find reasons to dislike our bodies.
Right, exactly. So
So,
so yeah, so once we kind of work through that a little bit, or maybe not working through it entirely, but then we
mhm,
can figure out how we want to respond to it, right, Carrie? Like maybe we'll choose to do something else. Um, like a self-care activity, like let's
Mhm.
choose the comfortable clothes, like you mentioned. Let's go for a walk to kind of like decompress,
Mhm.
have some tea or listen to music or read or have a dance party or call a friend or whatever might help
Or
you.
sit on your stability ball and bounce.
Yeah, something.
Yes. That is you laugh, but sit on one of those balls and bounce and try to be upset. You can't do it. It's
Good to
impossible.
know.
I
Okay.
challenge you to do that. Try it. That
Okay.
is that is for real a tool that
It's funny.
I tell people.
I could just picture you
I
being all pissed and
I
going to
sit
stop.
down and I start bouncing. And you can't. You smile, especially someone comes in like, "What are you doing?" Bouncing because I'm mad. Right? Like you're gonna laugh.
Right. Yeah, and some days none of that's really gonna like work or make you feel better per se, but it might help a little bit. Or you can just remind yourself if it's one of those days and you're like, I'm just not gonna be able to get out of this spiral that I'm in. Maybe you can at least stop from going down further and just remind yourself, like, I'm gonna get through this day, even though it might be crappy. I might have these thoughts all day, and I'll just get through it.
Right. Yeah, and keep it in mind that it's one day,
Right.
right? Like, and you can kind of choose how you want to feel tomorrow. If one of your reasons for feeling like that is because you don't have clothes that fit, then maybe a shopping trip is in order,
Right.
so that tomorrow you have clothes that fit.
Yeah.
Um, and so always look for the solutions that, as long as they include uh, nourishing your body and not starving it or um,
Punishing it.
yes, thank you, punishing it. Um, because when you punish your body, you're ultimately also punishing yourself at a deeper level.
Right. And it's setting you back. Like we've
Yeah.
talked about with dieting, like ultimately that self-punishment or the self-hatred turns into the self-punishment, which just sets us back in this whole
Mhm.
like journey process of trying to be kinder to ourselves.
Right. And, stop and ask yourself, okay, this is what I normally do. This is normally how I treat myself, right? When I'm feeling like crap, I punish myself.
Mhm.
How's that working for you?
Right.
Right? Has anything changed from you punishing yourself?
Right. Or do you just find yourself back in that cycle? Like we
Hmm.
want to help you break the cycles that are making you feel like this.
Yes. Amen.
Yeah. Well, on that note,
Break the cycle.
yeah,
Awesome. This was a good
I
conversation.
agree.
And of course, we'd love to know what you think of it. And if you have any of your own tips that work for you when you're having one of those days, we would love to hear it. And we might share it.
Yeah,
Uh,
so you can find us on Facebook and Instagram and Patreon and all these cool places. All the links to those are in the show notes in the footer at the bottom. Yeah,
yeah. So let us know.
yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, my dear.
Thank you.
Another great conversation. We'll see you next time.
Love you, latte.
Love you, latte.